Any advice for any future filmmakers out there who want to do what you're doing?
Just start. And I know that's simple and maybe cliche, but honestly, like the hardest thing is starting.
What's up, everybody? This is indeed the E-Man, chilling like a villain, singing like Bob Dylan, keep it on the low with some double stuff. Oh, yes. And right now, I have a very, very special guest in the building. My guest is a director. He's an editor. He's a cinematographer, and you might recognize him from a few shorts that he's directed, like Running the Bases and Time Travel Boy. You can catch his fantastic documentary called At the Drive-In on Amazon Prime right now. I want to welcome to the show Mr. Alexander Monelli. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Now I see a basement, man. It gives me flashbacks. I was born in New Jersey, and so I love like hanging out in the basement sometimes. You're in Pennsylvania, correct?
That's right. I'm in Northeast PA. I'm close. I'm close to there. I'm in kind of like the Scranton area, so only about 2 hours probably from where you grew up. But yeah, this is my basement office workspace. So I also do like YouTube videos about filmmaking and cameras and all that. And this is kind of like my set, so to speak, if you see.
Nice. I
But
see a movie pro. Well, that's the At the Drive-In movie poster in the
yeah,
background.
yep, right there.
Cool. Well, I like to like start off with the childhood, so I want to ask first how are things in Pennsylvania? How's the weather and how's everything over there?
Well, weather-wise, it's cold right now, which is kind of unusual.
Yeah.
It just snowed a little, not a lot, but a little this weekend, and we
What?
were trying to do a lot of Easter egg hunts with my daughters, and they all had to be moved indoors, but I think we still had fun and still succeeded, you know. But yeah, so Pennsylvania is great. I love it here. I love the Northeast PA area. We're very close to New York City, New Jersey, Philly. Um, Only about 4 hours from Pittsburgh. I'm a big Steelers fan,
I
so
can see.
yeah.
Got the terrible tower in the background.
Yes,
Um,
sir.
my memories of Philadelphia and Pennsylvania, that area, I have a few. Every year, on my dad's side, our family reunion, we would go to a different Embassy Suites, and we went to the one in Philly by the airport, and that was a great experience because they always make omelets fresh, and that was amazing. But
I'm
also, when I was living in New Jersey, when I was a kid, we had a field trip at this place called Sesame Place, which is in Pennsylvania. I just remember how the vanilla ice cream tasted, and I thought it was
I've been
fantastic.
to both of those places. Sesame Place is awesome. If you go in the summer, though, you'll melt because there's literally no shade there. But and the Embassy Suites, I'm pretty sure we've stayed there multiple times, like the night before a flight to like Disney World or something. You know, we would go down and stay overnight at the Philly airport area. So been
Nice,
there.
correct,
Yeah.
nice. So, but how was it like growing up in Pennsylvania? Like, do you have any what is it, highlights of your childhood? Like, what was your favorite cereal? I always ask about cereal because I love cereal. And what was your favorite Saturday morning show growing up, if you had one? Any special
Yeah.
memories?
So, I mean, cereal, I'll get that out of the way. I was a big Frosted Flakes fan. When I went to college, um, oh, what was the cereal in college? They were like, I used to describe them as like little ba hails of like hay bales, and they had the frosting on them.
Oh, Frosted Mini Wheats.
Frosted mini wheats, yes.
Okay, yeah.
So in college, I ate those all the time. But yeah, they a lot of carbs. But yeah, growing up, no, I had a great, normal, typical childhood that you would see on like a sitcom or something. You know, I was out in the woods making forts.
Nice.
Got a home video camera when I was 7 and started making short films, or at least directing my parents and filming me to make those short films. And that's kind of I guess where that started. But I always loved movies, and growing up, I was always allowed to watch things that were probably not appropriate for me age-wise. But they never impacted me negatively. Like I would watch Jean-Claude Van Damme movies and I'm like 7 years old and he's just like breaking necks and doing all sorts of stuff. And like my dad was like okay with it because I would just sit there calmly and I would never try to do any of that. But the minute like a sex scene would come on, he would change the channel and so
I feel you.
yeah.
One of my favorite Jean-Claude Van Damme film, without a doubt, is Bloodsport. I love
Mm.
Bloodsport.
Oh yeah.
Um, and like I totally relate to what you're saying because like my mom was really strict when it came to like stuff that I could watch and what I could watch and what I could not watch. Like if a nudity scene would pop up all of a sudden, you know what I'm saying?
Yep. Yeah.
And
I mean, you can break necks and kick guys into, off of cliffs, but
man, it's
the
some
minute they
titty
start
show up.
getting
It's just like
down, you got to change the channel.
exactly. Kind of started talking about it, but what movie or TV show totally solidified your decision in making movies? And now I've listened to a few interviews of yours. I know you said Steven Spielberg was a huge influence on you. So, what was the movie or TV show that truly did it for you? Were like, okay, this is what I want to do.
I mean, I feel like there was a different one at every stage. I would say, oddly enough, Home Alone was a movie when I was real little that
Right,
just made me love movies. And same with Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. I mean, these were like movies where I was like, I wanted to be in those movies, so I
right.
wanted to be an actor. But then I saw Jurassic Park, and that was like a one of those seminal moments. I was only 7 in the summer of '93. And
Okay,
then, I got really into sports. And I was like, I'm too cool. I got to play football and all this stuff. And I would say about eighth grade, ninth grade is when I got back into filmmaking and art and all this stuff. And, I was really into the Twilight Zone and I was a big Bruce Willis fan. I loved Die Hard. So my friends and we were like, hey, let's go to a movie. And at the time, we were in ninth grade. We were hanging out with the cheerleaders in the grade above us, and we thought we were so cool. And my friends were like, let's go to this movie with Bruce Willis. And I was like, all right, like I'll check out a Bruce Willis movie. I was
right.
more interested in the girls at the time. The minute the movie starts, I'm like, forget the girls. This was so fascinating. I mean, the movie starts with, this woman giving birth in a department store in Philadelphia. And I'm like, what is this? What is going on? And then these facts about comic books pop up. And I'm like, what? Like, I've never seen a movie like this. And it just hooked me and grabbed me. And that movie was Unbreakable. And that's the M. Night
Mm.
Shyamalan film from 2000, his follow-up to The Sixth Sense. And that was really where I was like, okay, I want to make movies. I want to do that. I want to tell a story like that. So that was a huge moment for me seeing that movie in November of 2000. So
And M Night is from that area, right?
he's from Philly, yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm about 2 hours north of him, but in Pennsylvania, what's cool about him is he tries to at least set or shoot his movies in Pennsylvania. So Pennsylvania, he
Right,
really kind of elevates a lot. And I try to do the same thing. I mean, if you look at my 4 features, they're all Pennsylvania stories.
right.
Um, so, I'm sort of like a trying to be a documentary version of M. Night Shyamalan, I guess, because I haven't ventured out and told a feature-length story outside of Pennsylvania yet. So we'll see.
Yet it's happening. It's gonna happen. I have a feeling. You know, one honestly, one of the best theater experiences I had was watching an M Night Shyamalan film, which was The Sixth Sense. Now, mind you, I watched it opening night. I didn't know what I was getting into. I thought, oh, it's cool. It looks a little scary or whatever. But man, when I tell you, I watched it with my girlfriend at the time, and it was a full house, man. And that point where that twist comes at the end, dude, I collectively heard people gasp, including myself. I was like, "What?"
Yeah.
Because up until that point, it was cool, but then like that twist, and then the cherry on top. excuse me, cherry on top is, I'm a geek. I read all the credits, and then I see Donnie Wahlberg's name pop up. I'm like, Donnie Wahlberg was in this, and then I was like, oh crap, he's the dude that. I was like, this movie's great, and I missed that. I missed that before the internet spoiling stuff, being able to go to a movie and totally be surprised by that. Because what's so genius about that movie is, for a split second when he shoots Bruce Willis, you think, oh well, he probably died, and then quickly it gets to the point where he follows the kid. I'm like, oh, he's alive. For a split second, you think that, and so that ending just totally just blows your mind. You know what I mean? And then like the little context clues, man, it was great.
Yeah, it's funny. I just gave a presentation or a workshop, I guess, at a film festival in the area about screenwriting, and I used, when I got to talking about endings, I used The Sixth Sense as an example as to, why did this twist work so well? Why did it shock so many people? And why was it not just shocking, but so like it took everyone's breath away? And I think it's because the scene right before it. So
Right,
if you remember the scene right before that, it's Cole, the little boy, Haley Joel Osment, in the car with his mom, and sorry, my daughters are trying to poke in. He's in the
oh,
car with his mom, and he's, telling her his secret. And there's this really emotional moment. And M. Night wrote that scene as if it were the ending of the movie. And so when that's over, you have this feeling of like, the climax, the movie's over.
right.
You didn't expect, you were kind of packing up and you thought, okay, the movie's over, and then bam, it just hits you with this twist that you didn't see. You didn't even see a twist coming because that scene was so good. So
Mm.
he's great. And his later movies aren't as, yeah, again, that scene was so impactful because of the scene before. It was so strong, and it was a catharsis. It was a climax in itself. So that's why I think that ending really just shook people, because there's never been a twist that shook people like that. So,
No, even I will say though, I watched Split in the movie theater too.
mm,
Thank God I didn't get on the internet or whatever. But man, again, I didn't see that coming either. I was like, this
yeah.
is cool. James McAvoy, playing different parts and everything, and I thought that was really cool. But then that ending, it was like, yo, and I'm gonna be honest with you. I wasn't the biggest fan of Unbreakable, but I think Bruce Willis is hella cool. And then just seeing that, I was like, oh, this is the part of the world of Unbreakable. Like, this is crazy. Really
Yeah.
didn't
I
care
mean,
for Glass too much, but that was great.
the guts that it took to release a movie that was a sequel, basically,
Yeah,
spin-off, and not use that in the promotion, to keep that as a twist.
yeah, I totally agree with you. Like not using that in the promotion or whatever, that would have totally ruined it or whatever. But yeah, yeah. And I think that was what's her name? I can't think of her name right now. It was her first film. Uh,
Oh, yes, the girl from Queen's Gambit. I know who you
yes,
mean. Yes.
yes,
Um,
yes.
Anya Taylor-Joy.
Yeah, and yeah,
It
yeah,
was
yeah,
definitely, I don't know if it was definitely one of her first. Yeah. So she was great in it. Yeah.
yeah. She reminded me a lot of Winona Ryder. Just that her look and everything like that, it gave me that, and some of the faces she would make. All right, so let's talk about this amazing documentary at the drive-in. Discovered, I heard about it because I was watching. There's this guy named the Angry Video Game Nerd. His name is James Ralph, and he was
Yeah.
talking about it, and I was just like, okay, cool, because I never got to experience a drive-in theater. The town that I came from is actually a little bit bigger than the town that's this film takes place in. But the movie theater, I would hear about it, but I never got a chance to experience it. And I was like, man, this seems like a great documentary to watch. In my lifetime, I worked at three different movie theaters, three different eras. So when I watch this documentary, it reminds me of the time when I worked at the Regal Cinema Six in Wilson, North Carolina, between the years of 2003 and 2005. And it's just the passionate group of characters. I don't want to call them characters because they're real people, but I'm just like, man, like the guy who traveled, I think his name is Mark. He traveled 6 hours just to get to work, and he was working for free. incredible. I thought the documentary just really well done and really well shot. It's important to have community. It's up to us to have community, and this perfectly demonstrates, community and joy and love and passion of movies. How long was the original cut of the film? Because I know you had to cut a lot, but how long was the original cut?
It's funny. I kind of cut things out as I went. So when I arrived, well, I did have a separate first cut, but it wasn't much different in terms of time. I knew I wanted to keep it in that 80-minute range. It was my first feature. I
Okay.
didn't want to kind of wear myself out. Um, but yeah, I mean, so the original version, I showed it to a few filmmakers that I kind of trust. Some I didn't even meet. I knew of them. I knew they had great films and they were playing at good film festivals. And I just reached out to them and it's like, I have this cut of a film. Would you watch it for me and maybe give me any thoughts? And I got some decent notes from that because, you kind of get lost in your
Yeah.
world a little bit when you're editing. And that definitely happened a little. The original version of At the Drive-In actually started the opening scene. It was like a cold open with Robert, who, if you see the film, he's the gentleman who kind of talks a lot, right? We cut to him. He's always critiquing something or opining about something.
Right, right. He has a lot of knowledge. That guy?
Yes.
Okay,
So,
yes.
but he's also a very funny character because he just goes on, and you don't really, that's what it's like to actually be with him. And the film started with him doing one of these long monologues that he would kind of present to me when I was filming. And I realized it wasn't working because the audience didn't have any um, background on who he was. There was no context to him
Right.
yet. You didn't understand that this was his thing, To a viewer, they were like, okay, he's just talking a lot. This is weird and boring. What is this? Is this funny? I don't even know. So I moved that to the middle of the film after you kind of get to know who he is, and it works much better. So it was kind of a strange opening at first, and someone suggested that, and I was like, why isn't this working? And then it dawned on me that you have to kind of know him
Right.
first to understand that. So that was probably the biggest change that I made. Um, from the first cut. But timing wise, they were almost very close. I knew I wanted to cap it right at 80 minutes. So
Okay. Yeah, man. Very, very, very good documentary. There's a moment in the film, really touching moment for me, because I love movies so much, where Virgil says, I can see why people want to escape. Life is hard. The Mahoning is a portal into that, of escape. I mean, life is hard, and it's okay to escape. It's okay to, to get your mind off of things every now and then. Um, my question for you is, as a filmmaker, and going through, the things of making a film now, are you still able to escape into movies and enjoy them the way like you used to as a younger kid or a teenager?
it's a good question. It's definitely harder for a
Mm,
variety of reasons. I'm a little older now. I'm 39, so and I have two kids. As you get older, you experience more tragic things.
right.
And at this point too, I see less movies now than I did probably 10, 15 years ago. And that's just the nature of my life now with kids and I work a lot. So, but there are still times when something can grab me. And I mean, that's what you live for. And that's why I love movies, because no matter where I'm at in my life, there's still those times when something does grab you and you forget, or you go into this kind of other world, so to speak. And I'm very interested in that theme. This film is certainly ripe with that. My second film goes way more into that because the guy actually builds this utopia in his house, let alone not just out in a drive-in. So, um, yeah, I mean, I'm definitely much more jaded and much more cynical about movies, which I don't like to be. And I'm, you know, and now with AI, I'm just sort of dreading, what's going to happen to cinema, because I'm not just a fan of, I'm a fan of all movies, especially movie history. A lot of my favorite movies are, pre 1960. So,
Oh wow,
um,
yeah.
it doesn't, I don't have the most amount of hope for the future, or at least keeping old films alive. Like, thank God for TCM and things like that. But yeah, there's still times when a movie can hold me and that wonder can, sprinkle and do great things.
When is the last time you've had that experience? Do you remember?
Off the top of my head, I really wish I could, I see movies that I enjoy. Like, I did like Anora, which won Best Picture this year.
Mm-hmm.
And, that inspired me too, because Sean Baker and I have a very similar way of, like, we both like to do almost everything. Like, if you look at Sean's movies, he writes them, he directs them, he edits them.
Right.
I like to do that stuff, not because I think I'm the best or not because, of arrogance. It's I just love making movies. I love sitting down and solving this puzzle. What is the best way to tell this story? Where do these shots, where do these moments go? Um, it's just so fun to do that. So, you know, seeing Anora and seeing him win those Oscars, that was to me special because I'm like, yes,
Right,
and
right.
I followed Sean his whole career. And when it's funny, at the drive-in played at the Savannah Film Festival in 2017, and he was there with the Florida Project, and
Yes.
he did a Q&A after the screening, and I was like third row watching it, and I was just like, man, like, I loved that movie. This is awesome. And to kind of see him now winning the Oscar,
Yeah.
it's so invigorating. And that's, even if it's not the film itself, it's the story behind it or the filmmaker behind it.
You know, it's so crazy. I didn't realize that he directed both the Florida Project and Honora. Um,
Hmm.
they actually. It's funny. I rented the Florida Project years ago at Redbox. I love Willem Dafoe, and but the even Honora and the the Florida Project, it had the titles have the same text, right? I noticed that. Um,
Yeah, it might actually. So he made a movie in between those two called Red Rocket, and
right
it might
with
also
Simon
have a
Rex.
similar font. Yes, with Simon Rex. Yeah.
Simon Rex. I meant to say font, but yes. Um, man, it's so crazy. I watched Honora the night of the Oscars because I thought the Oscars was going to be playing on Disney Plus. Dude. I don't have cable. I don't have Wi-Fi. I'm old school. You know what I'm saying? So
Or new school, I would say. I mean,
right,
that's you cut the cord, man. You'd be old school if you were like, "What's on ABC tonight at 8?"
right.
Like, that's to me, that's old school.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, like, yeah. That's thanks. I appreciate that. But I watched it. It's weird because I watched it the night of the Oscars. I recognized Mikey Madison because she was a part of this Hollywood Roundtable, which ironically included Demi Moore. And her personality is so vastly different from the character she plays in Honora. And I was like, man, this girl can act, man, and she's gorgeous. One of the best times I've ever had in a movie theater. I've had a lot of good times, but one of the best times I had in a movie theater was I watched Planet Terror slash Death Proof in a movie theater. I was all by myself in the movie theater. I had my snacks. I was good. And dude, I laughed a lot. The little mock trailers of don't. And they were it was funny to me. It was just it was a good time. I sat in a movie theater for what it was like close to 2 hours and I had a blast. Have you ever had an experience like that? And I'm not a big horror guy, but still I had a good time.
Yeah, well, I also saw Grindhouse in the theaters as well. And I think, I loved Planet Terror. I love Tarantino's movies, but for some reason, Death Proof the first time around, I was like, what's going on? Why is this is so like it just felt slow. It didn't feel like it didn't feel like Tarantino. It felt like someone trying to be like him.
Right.
Years later, I appreciate it more. But yeah, the trailers of that were the best part, I thought. And
Oh yeah.
having a blast in the movie theater. Yeah, hmm. What was the most fun I had in a movie theater? Nowadays, I see mostly kids' movies because I have two little girls who you
Right.
saw interrupt this conversation, which they're upstairs now. So, we see all the Disney Pixar stuff, but I do try to show them like movies, like good classic movies with people, not just animated characters. But the most fun in a movie theater. I do love horror movies. Trying to think which one. I don't know. I wish I could come up with a good answer. I
Well,
have like some of my movie collection over here, but
okay.
it's not really sparking anything for me.
I,
But it's funny. Like I remember when I was a kid, or at least a young man, I guess,
yeah.
20 years ago, there were like big, broad comedy movies. Like they don't make those anymore. Like I
Mm,
remember going to see Old School and Wedding Crashers and Tropic
yes.
Thunder and all these movies, and I was like in tears laughing, like just going crazy. And they don't make those
Anchorman.
movies. Anchorman, of course.
Yes.
Step Brothers, all those, like everything. And there's a lot of reasons why they suggest these movies aren't made anymore, but I miss them. They were fun. It was fun to go to the movies and laugh at absurd things or things you shouldn't laugh at, because it was just a movie. It was fun, and yeah, I certainly miss that because I feel like now movies more than ever just feel like products now. So.
Dude. And that's why I love that. I love your documentary showing these people like the guy dressing up as Jason. Movies have to be a celebration, man. Really, they have to be. You have to do that. I was talking to first. I want to say this. When you talk about comedies, have you ever seen this movie called Waiting with
Oh
Ryan
yeah, Ryan
Reynolds and
Reynolds.
Justin Long?
Mhm.
Love that movie. It's
I mean,
hilarious
it's
too.
all building up to that one moment at the end when he
Right.
just tells everyone off and he just goes on this big rant. Like the whole movie builds to that moment. So yeah, I mean, just for that, it's great. But yeah, I enjoyed that one as well.
For sure. But yeah, what was I saying? No, I was talking to Chris Carr about that, about I talked to like a few people in the I talked to Tamara Davis, she's a director, she directed Half Baked. I
She
talked
also
to
directed Billy Madison. I saw that you
yes.
spoke to her. So that was, yeah, I was very excited. I mean, you had the fact that you had Goldberg from the Mighty Ducks on
Oh,
your
you saw that?
podcast. I did. I watched
Oh,
it. Yeah. So
cool.
what a story he's had.
Man,
And
he's a survivor.
yeah, I mean, it's funny though. I love Heavyweights might be one of my favorite childhood movies, and
Nice.
I think it's Ben Stiller's best performance.
There's a
as Tony Perkis. So
there's a it's funny what you remember. Like my best friend at the time, we would always quote Starsky and Hutch because there's a part in Starsky and Hutch where Ben Stiller says, "Just do it, do it."
oh
We do say that all the time, and you're right. The comedies like that, man,
yeah,
they don't exist anymore. I was talking to Hal Rudnick, and I was telling him how, like, back in the day, like one of the movies I really wanted to see so bad because my mom wouldn't let me see it because it was rated R was Eddie Murphy's Boomerang because the soundtrack came out, which was crazy, and everybody at school was talking about it. And I finally got a chance to see it, and man, that movie is to this day, it's hilarious. Eddie
Yeah.
Murphy's hilarious on his own, but when he's able to bounce off different comedians, I think he's great. And have you ever seen that movie?
Yeah, I think, it to me it might be his last great movie.
Hmm.
And I love 1980s Eddie so much.
Right.
Coming to America is a movie that like raised me almost.
Right.
Like
Right.
all those movies from the 80s and his stand up and his SNL stuff. And then something in the 90s changed and all of a sudden he was, doing kids movies and he kind of like took a break from everything. So, yeah, man, that movie was good, but I feel like that was his last like that's a classic Eddie. Like that goes on his shelf of
Of
classics.
greats. Yeah, a lot of people say I that. Watched your other documentary called Marionette Land.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
and dude, I'm telling you, if I was walking in Philadelphia and if I were to see that place, uh, I would have wanted to know everything about it. I think it's just so cool that this guy lives above a theater. He lives with his mom. It's a sitcom almost. He lives with
Yeah.
his mom and the shenanigans and the ups and downs. I just thought it was really well done. Have you talked to him recently? How is he doing? I know during COVID, unfortunately, the theater has shut down for a little bit. So, do you have any updates?
Yeah. So first off, thank you because I feel like that, of my four features, I feel like that one is kind of fallen through the cracks. It never caught on the way the others have or got the type of viewership that the others have. So I kind of feel like, and it's one of my favorites because I love Rob and I still keep in touch with him. He's trying to launch his YouTube show finally in May next month. So
Cool.
yeah.
Good.
But yeah, the theater's closed. Mary Lou's still around. She's still doing well.
Good.
Rob's still battling his demons, but he's winning the fight, so that's all that matters right now. Um, but yeah, I miss him because I don't live there anymore. I used to live in Lancaster for a period
Okay.
for a period of time, and I'm back in Northeast PA now, so I'm not in town anymore down there. I used to live like 5 minutes from the puppet theater. And it's funny you mentioned that because that's literally how it all started. I was new to the area and I was walking through the city just trying to, you know, figure it out or find my way or find fun things. And I stumbled across a puppet theater. And I was like, this looks awesome. And then I met Rob and I was like, forget the theater. He's the attraction. Like
Right.
so yeah, I'm glad to hear that you watched Marionette Land. It certainly has a special place in my heart, and I have a lot of memories making that. So
Is the theater actually still up, or did they shut it? Did they demolish it?
no, so the whole building, they still own the whole building. They still live on
Good.
the second and third floor. On the first floor, he took out a lot of the theater seats that were in there, but I think he put some back, and I think he's trying to dress it up a little to shoot some of his YouTube episodes. But yeah, they're not letting people in. There's no more. The sign out front is gone, like that little marquee
Uh,
that he had. Um, and COVID too. Like COVID, obviously it shut them down, but I think it also, if you're dealing with anxiety, you're dealing with other things. COVID was sort of like an intensifier, I guess you could say. It really made any kind of negative emotion or anything you were dealing with much worse. So
yeah.
yeah, I think it kind of he's had some struggles to try to get back on track after COVID. But every time I talk to him, he seems all right. We still every holiday, Easter's coming up. I'm sure I'll get a text from him or I'll text him. So
And it seems like you're also keeping in touch with a lot of the guys from at the drive-in too. All right, is everybody good?
yeah, well, unfortunately, Jeff passed away.
Oh,
The projectionist and he was the owner and the projectionist. So He passed away about a year ago, unexpectedly. He had some kind of surgery. Everything seemed like it went fine, and he passed, unfortunately. So,
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, they have a nice memorial for him if you go to the theater now. There's a whole wall that's kind of dedicated to photos and everything to kind of keep his memory alive. And it's what you know was really nice. I went to the funeral, and you get like a what would you call it? Like a little pamphlet that kind of has their
Right.
obituary and photo and information and a prayer and all that. And the main photo was the one that we use as like the hero image for at the drive-in of him standing there with like the pink cotton candy sky with the screen.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I love that. They asked me like, would you be okay if we used this photo for Jeff's memorial? And I said, I would be honored. Like, I'm just so glad that I got to be a part of that and to have an image that you created be his sort of memorialized image is, you know, it's an
Yeah.
honor. So I'm just glad I'm glad more people know about him and his story kind of lives on, I hope.
Definitely, man. Because I mean, he really knew his stuff, man. When it comes to being a projectionist, man, he was like he was like
Yeah, it's
a
not
savant.
yeah, it's not an easy thing,
No, it's not.
they they have to know a lot of I mean, it's just threading it alone, but then there's little nuances to all of that. But and the rest of the guys I keep in touch with in one way or another. I usually go there once a year to see a movie.
Right.
So we'll see where I end up this year. But yeah, there's a lot of them left. So there's still only from the film, there's about three or four, I'd say, still left at
Oh,
yeah.
okay. Hmm.
So it
Well,
happens.
it happens definitely. I listened to an interview of yours. You made a documentary about a natural disaster that happened in Pennsylvania.
Hmm. Yeah.
Uh, and he asked one of the questions he asked was, "What do you want people to get from that documentary?" And one of the things you said, I think you said you want people to be thrilled by it, and you've used a couple other adjectives. I'm glad you said that though, because usually with a documentary like that, and people ask, like how you would people, somebody else would ask, they would probably say, "Well, we want you to be sympathetic and and all this other stuff." But you say thrilled, and I'm glad you said that because like for a long time, this is me personally. For a long time, I've kind of had a lot of guilt with certain reactions that I had with certain things. Perfect example. I recently watched this movie called Bob Trevino Likes It. It's a small film. It's not playing everywhere. It has John Leguizamo and Barbie Ferreira from Euphoria. And there's a scene in there with her and French Stewart. And the way French Stewart plays it, it's almost comedic. So I'm laughing a little bit, you know what I'm saying? But her reaction, it makes me feel sad, you know what I'm saying? Because it's a real thing that's happening to her. But I think that was purposely done, you know what I mean? And so I've kind of dealt like it kind of goes back to my childhood where I was watching something with a relative and I laughed at it and she made me feel like crap because I laughed at it. But not everybody reacts the same way to things, you know what I mean? And I've had to deal with that for a long time. And so I'm glad you said that, you want people to be thrilled, but at the same time feel this way and that way. It's different for different people. So I'm glad you said that.
Well, good. Yeah, that was so I work for a PBS channel and they hired me to make that film. And it's called Agnes 50. And in 1972 there was this huge and it didn't just affect Pennsylvania, it affected many states, upstate New York, all the way down, you know, probably towards like North Carolina. And
Mm,
I wanted it, I didn't want it to just be here's what happened. Isn't this sad? I wanted it to be thrilling in a way where you still, it was like a roller coaster ride of emotions. I
right.
wanted you at points to, yeah, maybe feel bad or sad, and other times to be shocked, and other times to be like jolted and excited, and other times to laugh. Like there are funny moments in it. So for me, I've never wanted to make a movie that was sort of one tone. right?
Right.
And at the drive-in, there's moments where you're like, should I be laughing at this?
Right.
You know?
Right.
And that's intentional. I always like in movies, like, I think the master of this is Paul Thomas Anderson. His
Mm.
movies, you're watching them, you're like, is that a joke? Like,
Right. Right.
was that
Right.
funny what Philip Seymour Hoffman just said in The Master? Like, and that's interesting because what it does is it forces the audience then to think about what they're watching. If they're not led into a joke or led into some situation with how to feel by a laugh track but
Right.
it forces them to think about it more and sit with it more. So that's just something that I've kind of picked up from directors that I admire. And yeah, so I try not to, you know, I do sometimes go into the I grew up on Spielberg, so there's a little sentimental nugget that's inside of me that sometimes comes up to the surface and then I have to kind of squash it back down. But I like those moments and I try to earn them rather than just throwing them at you with like simple, oh, it's a sad kid. So no, I try to earn it rather than throwing it at you, if that makes sense.
Definitely. It's crazy. I was talking to my friends about like I said, I used to live in a small town called Wilson, North Carolina, and I remember we had got hit by Hurricane Floyd back in '99, and it hit us hard. There was this beloved restaurant which sold barbecue called Bill's Barbecue. It was pretty nationally known. It was completely underwater. To see that, like as it like to see it, like I felt like I was in a video game. There's this game called Ninja Gaiden back in the day where they used to have these cutscenes, and I felt like I was in a. It was like it was unreal. You know what I mean? It
I
was like
remember that game. Yeah.
you remember that. And it was just like seeing it completely underwater. Like there's this big sign that said Bills, and to see it underwater, it's like wow. And there were parts of the town we couldn't get to because it was underwater. It was really nuts. So yeah, it made
Yeah.
me think. Yeah,
With the film the Agnes Flood film that I directed, part of the reason we wanted to do it was because, okay, it was 50 years. It was the 50th anniversary of this event. And a whole generation had, gone and a new generation was coming up and they didn't experience it. So they didn't know how, you might hear about it from a parent or a grandparent, but that's why I wanted it to really at times be thrilling and shocking too, was because I wanted them to really understand what this was and how it just destroy, like you said, like when you see something like that. So we were able to get so much old footage. And I thought, it really, I thought added to being able to just, places now, seeing it underwater, it's
yeah,
shocking. It takes your breath away. So, I treated it almost as like an action movie at times.
right. I do a lot of podcasts, so I listened to a few podcasts that you were a part of. When I typed in your name, um, there was this wrestling podcast that popped up. Well, now, are you a wrestling fan?
I'm a huge wrestling fan, and my best friend and roommate from college, um, he has a wrestling podcast that he does, and he writes on he has a website as well. Um, but he has been a guest on Stone Cold's podcast. He was a guest
Oh,
on
cool.
Mick Foley's podcast. Like all the wrestlers who had podcasts, they had him on as sort of like an analyst to talk about current things in wrestling. So we've stayed friends, and once or twice a year I kind of hop on and share my thoughts about what happened. Usually it's like a WrestleMania or a Royal Rumble. Those are kind of the two biggest. I mean, I'm assuming you asked, so I'm assuming you're a wrestling fan.
Wait, here's the thing. Back in the 80s, like I'm a little older than you are, but back in the 80s, like I was a huge wrestling fan. When I moved to the South, and like my great grandmother was a huge wrestling fan, but she was a WCW fan. I'm like,
Sure.
what is WCW? And so I kind of like, fell in love with like Ric Flair and those guys. But I bring that up because I really think we're living in a weird time now And recently, Hulk Hogan was booed at WrestleMania. And I just think I understand why they booed him, but I'm like, I never thought I would live to see one of my heroes at the time being booed. This is Hulk Hogan. This is crazy. I understand why they booed him because he's a racist, but I mean, and he's done a lot of other things. But it's
Yeah.
like sometimes things are happening now as I get older. Where I'm like, am I living in the Twilight Zone? This is crazy. Hulk Hogan's being. It's like it's kind of like that quote in Batman. It's like if you
You
live
live
long
long,
enough,
you live long
yeah,
enough to become the villain.
right. That's exactly
You
what
either
it
die
is.
a hero or live long enough to become that is Hulk Hogan. I mean,
Yeah,
they booed him for a variety of reasons. And I think it was the first Raw episode on Netflix. So it was like this huge episode a couple of months ago.
right.
And yeah, he came out, but I think, on top of the racism, on top of, all the other things he's done and said over the years, you know, I think he was there to shill some stupid product. And I think that is what ultimately put everybody over the top as to like, you're not even here just to support wrestling and to be there for the fans. You're trying to hawk some stupid beer, I think
Right,
it
right.
was. So I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
fans were just kind of like, I think that culmination of all of that is why it happened. But I know what you mean. Like look, when I was 3, I had a Hulk Hogan poster in my room. I still have my Hulk Hogan figures from when I was a kid. He was a huge when you think of wrestling, if you've never watched wrestling, you at least know who Hulk Hogan is. So it's
Right.
crazy, yeah, that he's now public enemy number one to wrestling fans. But
It's nuts, man. I never thought I'd live to see that. Any advice for any future filmmakers out there who want to do what you're doing?
yeah, so I teach a class at a film class at a local university, Marywood University, and I always try to give them nuggets of things I wish I could have done differently, or things at the drive-in started because I was about to turn 30, and I realized I hadn't made a feature yet. All my hero directors had made their first feature well before they were 30.
Right,
So I just started. I stopped waiting for a budget or someone to give me money or the right story. Like I literally started shooting at the drive-in with such minimal background. Like no one would ever do that. No one in their right mind would be like, all right, I'm going to jump into like a 2-year long project, barely knowing anything. All I knew when I started was there was this older guy who ran a drive-in and they only showed 35 millimeter film because they were never able to afford a new digital projector to show newer
right,
movies. To me, that was like, okay, that's enough. So there's tension there, there's drama. Can they stay open? Will they get an audience? What will they show? How do you even show film? What is that process like? Because those projectors were the original 1949 projectors. Like, how are they still operating? Right.
right,
So all of that was enough to get me started. And then it was just luck, right? It was pure luck meeting these people and kind of pivoting the story a little bit to be more just about them. It's more like Stand By Me than like, this kind of tension-filled film. It's more of a character piece. And then, my favorite, again, calling them characters is strange because they're real people, like you said,
right,
but I had not planned on meeting somebody like Robert. He's in the film. I met him on opening night, and every time I would see him there, he would just word vomit all this stuff to me. And as I would watch it back, like the next day, I would find myself laughing, and I'm like, should I be laughing? But like, there was just such a vibrant charm to him, and I felt like if I had edited him, it would have done it a disservice because anyone who goes there, if they will encounter him, and that's what an encounter with him is like. And by doing it multiple times throughout the film, by cutting to him for like these 2-minute long soliloquies, it really puts you in that position. And I think by the second or third time, when I would watch this film with audiences, that was the great thing. Like this played at, we had a lot of public screenings, so I got to really see how people reacted. And by the time he popped up for like the third time, you could hear people in the audience start to like react before he even would say a word. They'd be like,
Right.
"Oh, it's him again," or oh, they would just start laughing before he would say anything because they knew he was going to say something funny. Like my favorite, there's so many great lines that he has, but things like that, you can't, you just get lucky meeting people and finding these situations because, I much prefer documentaries where you're following something and you don't know what's going to happen, right? Rather than telling
Right.
like it's funny though. I think one of the best documentaries ever made is The Last Dance, the Michael Jordan documentary series.
I
And
never
that,
got to watch that, but
and
yeah, I
that
heard
is
good.
just all like you're telling old stories. But I like to be on this kind of journey with a character, not knowing where it's going to go. And it's worked out a few times so far. So, we'll see. But my advice, which this is a long way of getting to my advice,
It's all good.
is to just start. And I know that's simple and maybe cliche, but honestly, like the hardest thing is starting because
Mm,
once you go, it's all downhill, right? You get that momentum and you start, and you can't be afraid to put yourself out there. I think that holds people back a lot. I tell my students, you always hear people say, "Oh, if I only had that $1 million idea." And I tell them, you all have had $1 million ideas. You just didn't recognize it or
right.
you didn't act on it because you didn't have the sort of foundation built inside you to realize that this is a potentially good idea or the courage to do it. But everyone, no matter who they are, has had an idea, whether it's a movie or whether it's a product where it could have been great. It could have been a successful, you know, creation, but their own inhibitions stopped them from pursuing it because they were like, well, I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm not a filmmaker.
Yeah,
But
for sure. You're right though. I remember Neo, the artist Neo, the guy, the singer. He says like we all kind of pull from the same nexus of creativity. So
mhm,
that's why like if you don't do something as far as this idea that you were talking about, down the line somebody else will have it or something
for
very
sure.
similar. You know
Yep.
what I'm saying? So I
Mhm.
totally agree with you. I want to say something real quick. There's a part of the documentary at the drive-in where there's like a Friday the 13th night, and that damn Friday the 13th NES game, like the theme song pops up, and I still get goosebumps because when I was a kid, I went down to my cousin's basement. He was cool. He had a piranha tank and everything like that, but he was playing that game, and something about that game freaked me the hell out. The movies don't, but that game is just terrifying to me, and I don't know why. So when I heard
Well,
that theme song, I was like,
it's the song, it's the fact that it's this like barren campground. Like I've played that game a million times too. That's why that's in the film because it just really hit my nostalgia button when I saw someone playing it. And yeah, any second Jason could jump out and
right,
you didn't know.
pops,
And it was always this like,
yeah,
like it would really scare you. So yeah, I have that game. I still have it, but
what?
haven't played it in a
Do you have
while.
any social media platforms that people can contact you? Any plugs?
Yeah, so I've really just in the past couple of months started doing YouTube. I don't want to say it's the future, it's kind of the now. I feel like every filmmaker should kind of have some kind of YouTube presence. So I started doing YouTube videos. It's just my name, Alexander Monelli. My handle is at Monelli Films. So check me out on YouTube and subscribe. I put up a video like every week or two. Um, Try to do filmmaking, camera stuff, and Instagram, same handle, Manelli Films. But yeah, those are the two best ways. And look, reach out. Anyone can reach out. That's what you did. I got an email from you one day, and that's all it takes. Just reach out. I read all my email. I read everything. So, um, be happy to talk to anyone, you can see my email on my YouTube page. It's al@manellifilms.com. And yeah.
Cool, man. Well, look, again, man, thank you for your time. I appreciate you. I know we went over just a little bit, but you know what I'm saying, I appreciate your time, and and I thank you for making two amazing documentaries. Right, and you could, like I said, you could watch them now on, you could watch At the Drive-In on Amazon Prime. I know you could watch Marionette Land on Tubi,
Yeah, you can
and
watch them both on Tubi. You can watch them both on Amazon. You can watch them. There's a couple other places. So if you go on Letterboxd and you look up either film, it'll show you where you can watch them. So there's a lot of free places. I know At the Drive-In's on YouTube as well, like the YouTube Movies channel.
yeah,
So yeah, there's a lot of places to see it for free. So
for sure, man. But thanks for your time, man. I appreciate it, man.
all right, thank you.